State your name for the record.
Douglas Flick.
My name is Katya Hernandez.
Jonathan Caudell.
My name is Jenny Stuhlreyer.
My name is Safa, Shahwan.
I'm Hispanic. I'm 100% Mexican.
I am Bolivian, Jordanian, and Spanish.
I'm Asian.
I actually face having to prove myself because of my ethnicity. People often make assumptions that they shouldn't be making, and I often have to make up for that.
Discrimination, a lot of racism, stereotypes, but then again, you just take them.
Because my ancestors, they weren't of mixed ethnicities like I am, and so in a way I have to be more American than the American kids, and more Arab than the Arab kids, and more Hispanic than the Hispanic kids, and I have to balance that all at one time, and all those different cultural ideas and standards, and it's a lot at one time, and you never quite fit in one category, whereas my ancestors weren't mixed like that, so they just had it really easy.
Planted into a woman's head, at the very beginning of her life, that you have to be very strong in your opinion about where you stand in society and where you stand in the home. So to say that I'm not a feminist is going to make me sound like I don't support women who go to work every day and are, the breadwinners for their family, where their husband stays at home and cook. And there are plenty of families that do that. So I don't want to distinguish myself as a feminist, but I do strongly support, the movement of women up in society as time goes on.
Because you separate everything into women and African Americans, and you have all these different rights, and then you have things like affirmative action, which can be good in some cases, but in other cases it's not always fair. But it should just all be the same for everybody, which is what the Constitution talks about, equality.
It depends on the location you go. I mean, in one location, there's going to be one denomination that's more prevailing than the other. So if you have the same general denomination, you go there, you're going to be more accepted than somebody who's different. We are born to be biased. It's how we categorize new information. We have a certain group of information, we can find it because we bias it, and we know where it's going to be found. Prejudice is just another, it's like a negative connotation for biasism, and bias is not a bad thing in itself. Bias kind of gives you a basic idea of how a person is going to act around you. It's going to give you a basic idea of how they're going to respond to different environments, and if you can understand, have a general idea of how to react to them. But it's when you get new information and your bias does not change, that's when it becomes prejudice. Racism it's the negative connotation of bias. It's when you get the idea of somebody that you've been told all your life, but you don't have any real knowledge. You have no real information backing it up, and you're just taking really bad stereotypes, and you're using that to base your information off, and that's wrong.
My mother is Asian, and she's actually exponentially a better driver than my father, who is white. So I believe that's a stereotype.
What we're going for here is equality, and I think that we're slowly achieving that over time. A lot of progress is being made towards that ultimate goal. So I think part of that is, allowing a woman to fight for her country just as well as a man can, because they have the same capabilities. Unfortunately, that's what the stereotype is that we, are better at the whole child care and health giving sort of thing. And while, that could be true for either gender.
The other day, I was coming out of class, and a guy just spit on me and decides to say, jump back over the fence, you Mexican bee. And I didn't really know how to take that. He just expected that I was an illegal immigrant, and just because of the way I looked, he decided to act upon that, and just a whole generalization against me. I was bullied for the beginning part of this year randomly by people in my class, so I kind of took the whole form as if you can't beat them, join them, in a way, just to laugh at yourself, laugh it off, and to help me get through a lot of it. Get put down, or when you get pushed around, you kind of feel you can either go both ways. You can feel down about yourself, or you can do something about it, and I definitely want to do something about it. Having someone to inspire me, or someone who is that ethnic person, it definitely helps a lot. It gives you something to look forward to, something to rely back on and say, well, they did something about it and I can too, because I have that same amount of power. I don't see Mexico as a home at all. I came here when I was 2 years old, and I grew up here, so I was surrounded by America. So my dad jokes around a lot and says that I'm not Mexican American or Mexican at all, because I grew up here, and I kind of see America's society as how I grew up, and I don't view a lot of the same things as they do in Mexico.
It was once so easy to immigrate to America, and now we are tightening those rules a little. We're not allowing so many immigrants into the country these days, and I think that if a person wants to immigrate to the U.S., well, actually, if a person wants to immigrate to the U.S., basically, if you don't know somebody in the U.S., you have no way of getting in, legally at least. And so I think it's really difficult for people to get into the country legally, and so they're turning to an illegal option.
My stance on immigration is, honestly, I don't know too much about the immigration itself, but I support immigration, but it is a very hard process. And if they want to come to America, yeah, it's fine with me. I have no problem with that. And there's a lot of people I know that, I have friends that are from Ireland. They want to come over to America, but the immigration system's hard, and they have to be sponsored, and they don't have sponsorships.
Olive Elementary School. I was the only Hispanic at the school. My family was the only Hispanic family in church, or in Monroe, and it was really hard, and I didn't really notice any differences between me and everybody else around me until other people pointed them out. It reflects on my personality, on how I take things when say, getting spit on, how you take that, obviously can reflect on anyone's personality, and being more energetic about it tends to help your mood. After being ridiculed in elementary school, I didn't realize that I was different until I got in middle school. And when I got in middle school, I started seeing the differences between me and other people. I realized that I was Mexican. It made me have to grow up, because my parents could not speak English, so I had to teach them everything that they knew, and then I also had to teach my sister. So having to grow up like that, and being more, instead of being immature about being called out on what I am, or someone being racist or being discriminated against, instead of being immature about it, I had to be mature and not start any fights at school or anything like that, per se. I feel like you want to be different, you want to be who you are, but yet you want to be treated as everyone else, and everybody else wants to be treated equally and the same, but their own person.
I believe that I have to try a little bit harder, because in school and in the workplace, because A, I'm a girl, that's the first thing, and then secondly, I'm a minority, so people often assume that I'm not as bright as the Caucasian male next to me, So I have to try a little bit harder to, prove myself in many situations.
I usually portray us as being able to constantly do martial arts, which is very impossible for some people like me who can't. And usually most Asians are always geniuses, but not all are.
I think that, portraying a child who is of mixed ethnicity is actually not portrayed that often in the media, and that oftentimes, a Hispanic might be portrayed in a certain way that isn't made so appealing. So I'm not that satisfied with how minorities are portrayed in the media.
It depends on which media you're looking at. The media in itself is a really broad subject as well. I mean, you have conservatism, you have liberalism, and just the differences between those two. It sometimes will give white people a really bad connotation towards other groups, but I really don't see it too much myself because I don't watch the news that often. Because I find most news people they don't always tell the truth. They just tell their side of the truth.
It's a disorder in which your pancreatic cells, they think something's wrong with your body, so they attack each other, and then you don't have any left, or you have very few left that can't reproduce. So then they can't remove insulin or create insulin, and which is an enzyme that helps get rid of sugar in food when you eat. So then your blood sugar raises and you get really sick and start to produce this chemical called a ketone, which results in ketoacidosis, and you get just really ill and you can go into a coma. Because of those lovely commercials with elderly people who portray diabetes as just this old person disease that you get from being overweight and having an advanced age, when really there's two types. There's type 2, which does occur mostly in elderly overweight people, but there's juvenile diabetes, which affects children everywhere and is much harder to deal with. I have to eat. I could never have an eating disorder, which I'm kind of glad about, but at the same time I'm not. But I have to eat all the time, which means I can't, my church had a 30-hour famine, which I couldn't participate in. And, my parents are always worried about me eating. And I can't just go off and exercise when I want to. I have to check my blood sugar, and if I'm low, I have to treat it with food, and then I'll have to wait. And I can't just do all the things some normal kids do. I've hated myself for having it, and I've wondered, why do I have this? And I just thought about it, and it really was hard. It's been about 5 years. It'll be 6 years this November. But I didn't realize how bad I must have looked, because when I got to the hospital, my parents were, astonished from it. They just didn't understand. I guess my face was sunken and I didn't even know that. And I'd lost about 10 pounds in a week.
A lot of people believe, in today's world that there are just so many feminists and that everybody's, like crazy in this militant lifestyle, and they just, are so aggressive about it. But really, I think that a lot of us are just sort of, let me take care of my own life. Let me do what I want to do, whether it be a career or a home life with my children. If you want to take some years off to raise them, there's nothing wrong with that. But if your husband wants to do that, there's nothing wrong with that either. And it's okay with being neutral. And I think a lot of women are misconceived in the way that, that they just don't know where they stand, or a lot of people just assume that they're, crazy activists. All throughout your life, you're just going to be surrounded by people who are going to, judge you one way or the other, if they just want to look at your body, if they just want to, avoid you completely. It's really just up to you who you surround yourself with in the end. The only thing that really frustrates me, I think, is that, all of these women heroes in the movies and stuff like that. We have, the spies, the CIA agents, any kind of, tough woman who's out there doing, whatever in the movies. It's always like this, sexified version of whatever anybody who is really doing that sort of stuff would be. I think, when people say strip club, I think of naked women, not necessarily naked men, because I think it's just so portrayed in the media, where, you have, these pole dancers and, women who have just, done this with their entire lives and are just sparkly and beautiful and stuff like that, and it's not necessarily something that you see a masculine person do. The thing with